Yellow my fellow bellow. Ready for some r/malicious compliance. Posted BYU/JJN 1989. What? I cannot hear you. I started a brand new job at a resort, somewhere USA. I look at the reviews, and they had some dire warnings, but I worked in some pretty wild places before. So, I sign up prepared. I don't expect to stay for long. I show up to work as a maintenance man. My new boss gives me a tour and a radio. He calls me on this radio. I call him back. I held the button for maybe 3 seconds before I started speaking. He didn't answer. So, I called again, nothing. Well, later he confronts me and tells me that he hasn't heard me respond on the radio. So, I tell him that I called. He told me to hold the button down for 1 second before speaking. From here on out, I knew this would be a long job. Later that day, he calls on the radio again. So, I hold the button down for 1 second instead of the 3 I did before, respond, and I hear his radio sound, SSSHHHT, SSSHHHT, like he just pushed the button down and lifted it without talking. I respond again his radio sounds, SSSHHHT, SSSHHHT. We tag back and forth like this for 9 times. He was pissed, but I was already enjoying my first day. Every morning to date, for 4 months now, he gets on his radio and makes the SSSHHHT, SSSHHHT, sound like he isn't holding the button down on his radio long enough for his radio to pick up his voice. One of the maintenance guys usually calls on the radio, "Hey, boss, were you calling me?" He will respond, SSSHHHT, SSSHHHT. So, I talk to the night shift worker who I am supposed to replace. Well, he tells me that over the past 2 years, our beloved boss has bestowed the night position, one man, with increasing amounts of nightly, weekly, and monthly duties. Our dear boss also had the fortune of gifting increasing amounts of projects, like have a one-man paint an entire fire truck with 2 coats of paint, in one night. Maybe, it would be possible to put 1 coat of paint on a fire truck if we didn't have 6 hours of regular duties on an 8-hour shift. However, our boss has some strange sense of time that no one can seem to figure out. So of course, to compound the radio issue, we painted this truck in the noisy generator room to make it hard to hear the radio. Not that we know who he is calling for on the radio anyway. So, then our boss got tired of seeing both of the night shift workers driving around in one golf cart. He told us that we need to split up our duties and drive 2 different golf carts. Now, I know for a fact, that when we do any regular duty X, or project Y, when we both do it, our time gets cut in half. Even if I am fixing a leaky pipe, my partner can save a lot of time fetching parts and tools. I literally timed the duties we do, both together and apart, with my watch, and I know we accomplish the same amount of work either way. So now we both drive 2 golf carts to the same places at the same times. We split fixing pipes into 2 duties, fixing, and fetching. We split inspecting fire extinguishers into 2 parts. I look at the height off the ground, look for rust, and he will look to see if it is sealed and has the right pressure. In fact, every task we do has been broken down such that we work together. Then our boss wanted us to break up our co-workers' parties in employee housing. He wanted us to take pictures of anyone partying at night. He wanted us to patrol the area and look for partiers every night. Now, if you don't know, this is a great way to anger your co-workers. Angry co-workers can make your life miserable at work. So, we drive by, wave kindly at the 10 people drinking beer on the deck at 2 a.m., and we often chat with them. I usually turn to my co-worker in the second golf cart and ask him, "Hey, Does this look like a party to you? He usually says, nope. Then, we move on. If we get a noise complaint, we kindly ask the partiers to take it to the employee recreation building. When we take pictures, we smudge some dirt on our cameras and take them from too far away to identify anyone. When our boss asks about the partiers at 2 a.m., we will say, we didn't see them at midnight when we drove by. Anyway, our boss has dreamed up many ingenious ways of shooting himself in the foot, alienating/angering his workers, damaging his workers' reputations behind their backs, and much more, but these are just some of the ways his workers unite to maliciously comply. I suppose upper management doesn't want to get rid of him, because few people are willing to do this job. Our boss would love to leave, but no one will hire him elsewhere. He told me this last part directly. Posted BYU/Trebusimi. A sour team online. First time poster, so, excuse me if this isn't the usual format or whatever. Future me, well, this was a doozy to write, so I hope y'all like it. Edit. Thanks everyone for the kind words about enjoying the read. I try my best to write short stories, so being complimented on this felt great. Also, woo doubled my karma overnight. I'm glad y'all liked it. It was a rather brief interaction on Apex, on Xbox. I joined a lobby and I'm a talker, so I've always got my mic in. I notice the other two players have their mics in too. Great. It's hard enough to find good teammates, but honestly I'll take subpar with a mic over good without one. Everything is perfectly normal through picking phase. We say hello, you ready? That sorta pre-game talk. I got them impression they were together after they began addressing each other and would later find out they're actually sitting in the same room. So far so good, right? We picked, talked, and we're deciding where to drop. I'm more of a scaredy cat and prefer to just survive as long as possible, but these two were talking about how they were pretty good and I decided to go with them to Skulltown. For those unfamiliar, it's a really popular area which usually results in maybe 2/5 plus teams that go there leaving alive. They decided it wasn't a good idea as the drop was a little late, so we went towards Market, a slightly less popular spot just outside of Skulltown, and luckily no other teams landed with us. At this point the other two didn't really seem interested in talking with me, so I shrugged them off and went to the buildings just outside of Market so we wouldn't be sharing loot. Unfortunately there were no weapons here, and I mean literally nothing, not even a Mozambique or a P2020, and mentioning this was my biggest mistake. I think I said, man, I can't find a weapon, and the more talkative of the two, I'll call him Guy 1, said something like, what do you mean there's tons of guns here? I mentioned I landed right outside so we'd get more loot, and since I was playing Octane, one of the fastest characters, I could easily run over or catch up to them. Then Guy 1 starts chewing me out, saying all kinds of things like, why the F did you do that? Are you effing re-ed? Jesus Christ, you're such a FT. Honestly I took it all as a joke, because while I've run across some salty players and just toxic people, this was the stereotype. It felt like I was playing with Dr. Disrespect's persona, but it was a real person. I think I even chuckled a bit, and I'm pretty good with my pathing, so before they'd finished looting Market I'd gone through a few buildings and made it to them, finally gather some of the extra weapons. This is when I started to realize, he might not be joking. At this point we're off in search of more loot and people to shoot, when I hear Guy 1 say, oh, you're actually following us. And then his buddy added that, maybe he isn't really just a worthless sea-sucker. At that point I was confused, and I'm usually a very direct person, so I just asked them, are you guys serious? And yet I know by saying that I'm basically asking for it, but I've been there and it definitely wasn't that, or at least not the normal. Well, little did I know I'd run into the most toxic duo I've yet to meet in gaming. My question was followed with every insult you could possibly imagine. I wouldn't be doing it justice if I tried to remember even some of what they said. It was literally the cliché WW2 bad guys, racism, anti-Semitic, fat, yo mama jokes, which was actually rather tame for the rest, sexist, anti-LGBT, I mean you name it, and they tried using it to insult me. Now I'm a bit of an edgy boy myself, so I'm not really bothered by that, but this was unbelievable just in sheer terms of like genuine anger and malicious intent. So here's the malicious compliance. At some point during their tirade that'd make the elder swear look like a joke, they tell me to just start shooting into the air and F off and die, we'll do better off without you. Heh heh, at first I did just walk away, but I thought that if I could just screw with these guys at this point, why not? Remember, I'm one of the fastest characters in the game, so I was able to catch up to them really quickly, and they were headed towards where several shots were heard. At this point there were about 9 teams left, and for those of you who play, you'll know how deadly this time is, because the area is shrinking and almost everything will be in earshot, so everyone converges. Once I caught up to them, I made sure to shoot off a full mag from both my guns and drop both of my grenades at the building they were climbing. "K though, what the hell are you doing?" Lines, of course filled with as much profanity as they could manage to come up with, to which I responded, "Well, you told me to shoot in the air and F off, so good luck fighting the other teams." And as if Ben Brode himself, the god of selling Hearthstone packs and the bestower of RNG, had come to my aid, as I immediately hear one of their characters yell that they'd been shot. I hightailed it out of there. The last thing I heard from the game was the sound of 2 other teams fighting on the other side of Skulltown, right next to them. Don't think the firefight stopped the barrage of insults, but boy did it feel good listening to them realize I was going to outlast them after everything they said. Oh, but don't worry dear reader, if you've made it this far, then let me grant you the cherry upon this cake. You see, I'm quite good at hiding, so I know tons of places where I can wait out other teams fighting and try to swoop in and take the loot for myself. Well, Guy 1 felt like sticking around to critique my work and continued calling me AB for several minutes, because I wasn't trying to get into the middle of 2 other teams shooting at each other. Well, eventually I make top 3, and I was fairly certain the 2 other teams were at least at 2/3 members strong, so again I wasn't looking for a fight. Unfortunately for me, the RIN was not closing near any buildings, so I'd now have to run into a nearly open field, but that's when I found out Ben Brode had not only touched my game with good RNG, he had taken the reins for himself. Somehow by the time I got to that field, only 2 players were left on one team and they were badly hurt. I swoop in, get a quick knockdown, I shoot the other, then stop, one last petty revenge. With Guy 1 still watching, I knew he'd get the victory too if I won, so I stood out in the field and dropped everything and started looking up and down trying to give a sign to this man. At first he shot, but then 2 stopped. I crouch walked over to him, receiving more insults about how he's my new butt buddy, but I'll be damned if I was gonna win this one. I let him revive his ally, then proceeded to slowly walk into the ring, giving one last nod before losing the match. Are you really that petty? It would have been great to say, "No, I'm just maliciously compliant," but alas, I had not foreseen such beauty. I simply left him with a, "No." I just decided to F off and die.